Hello everyone and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk, Best Practices for E-Commerce Customization Development. My name is Evan and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and by participating in the session using Microsoft Teams, your name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, please disconnect at this time. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Now let's get started. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Sam Jarawan, Principal Program Manager. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Evan. So today I'll be talking about best practices for e-commerce customization. In the agenda today, I will go over a little bit of information on the development environment. I'll cover updating and deploying. Then I'll jump into, and I'll spend a good amount of time here under module and theme development customization options. Then some time on performance, and last, security. So to jump right in here, I'm going to start with the development environment. Now, there's another Tech Talk I did a little while ago, which you can find on the Tech Talk community site, all around e-commerce extensibility. So I won't go into details today on how to set up a dev environment. You can find it there. And we also have docs online, so you can see an aka.ms link there to do that. But what I do want to cover are 2 points when setting up your environment, is how to configure it against a e-commerce live production site as well as a retail server. So I'm going to jump over to Visual Studio right away, and I have downloaded a fresh SDK here, and I'm going to open up this env file and show you how to configure that. So there's a few settings in here. This first one, this partner setting, always stays the same, and there's a lot of comments in here to help you along. And this port is, when I run the node server, you'll see the port running is 4000. So the first thing I want to show you is this host command, this host environment variable here. This is where, as it states here, you can set to the domain of your customer-facing e-commerce site. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab that. Okay, so I have a Fabricam e-commerce site running right here. This is a typical site you'll see with our demo data. It's a fashion site. I'm going to grab that right there and put that in here. In a few moments, I'm going to show you how in a dev environment, you can use this entry here to debug your live website. But instead of it running on one of our cloud servers, it's running on your local dev environment. So that's one setting I wanted to cover. And then I have another set of settings just down here, which points to your retail server. So the important one here, the first one is this base URL. If you go to LCS, so I'm going to go back to a browser, and I have LCS opened here. So if you've deployed if you have an environment deployed, you can go to the scale unit, and there's a link right down here for the Commerce headquarters. I'm going to just copy that link right here and go back, and I'm going to paste it. The next thing it asks for is a channel ID, a catalog ID, and an OUN. The catalog ID is always going to be 0. We only support the catalog 0 for e-commerce sites. And then I need the channel ID and the OUN. To get those, I need to go to HQ to get that. So back in LCS, you can get to HQ from right here. In fact, I realized that I copied the wrong one. I wanted this URL here, my bad, Commerce Engine URL, to be right here. There we go. And this is the URL for the HQ. So those are the 2 links you can get here. Also, if you're using e-commerce and want to get to Site Builder, you can get that link from the e-commerce tab right here. So I'm going to go over, while that's loading, there's the e-commerce Site Builder link. I'm going to go back to HQ here, and what I've done is I've gone to my online store page, and you can just type in online stores, and this shows me all the channels that I have available in my configuration. Now, generally the first 4 you'll always see on any demo data environments. These other ones I've just added, but I'm going to take this Fabricam Extended Online Store. That's the channel that is powering this website here. And I'm going to select Options, Record Info, and here's this record ID. This is the one I need to paste right here. And the last thing I need is this OUN. OUN stands for Operating Unit Number, and it's right here, 128. So I'll go back over here and type in 128. Okay, now the last thing I need here is this image URL. That's where it's going to pull all the images as you're debugging against your live site. So to get that URL, what I can do is go to Site Builder, and I showed you how you would launch Site Builder right from LCS, and you can just go to the media library here and pick any of the images that are already in there. What that gives me is a shortcut to see the URLs for my images that are deployed with this environment. So over on the right side, there's a public URL. Now I don't want this part at the end. That's this URL for this particular image, but this gives me the domain for the image server. So I'm going to copy that and add that right there. Now there's just one additional piece I need to add, which is this /search, and we have all this documented as well. And so if you look in our documentation, you can find out how to do this. So that's all I have to do. Now, as I'm going, in a few moments, I will show you where this gets used, and a little later when I hit data actions, I'll show you where this gets used. But this allows me, as I'm debugging, to call live retail server APIs hitting this particular channel, and you can change that as you want. Just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes as I was cutting and pasting in front of you, I have this already pre-set up, so I'm just going to paste this over, and I've just gotten rid of the comments. So I'm going to save this. And if you've used our development environment before or seen my other talks, you'll know that I can run a command called yarn start, and that's going to run my node server. And when it's ready, it'll say it's ready on port 4000, so that's where this port comes in, so you can change that. Okay, so that pretty much covers the first little bit around configuring my env file. As soon as this is ready, I'm going to show you how this particular environment variable is used. While that's happening, I'll just give you a quick overview of the files that are part of the SDK. One I'm going to cover once I'm done this next demo is the package.json. This shows all the dependency packages. Now, when you first acquire the SDK, you'll see there are a bunch of dependencies here which also will get downloaded. And so, for example, the starter pack is our module library of modules. This Fabricam design kit is our Fabricam theme. And this retail proxy is our proxy to call our retail server APIs. And you can see the version numbers here. So in a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to upgrade the versions on this here. I can see the port is ready now at 4000, but right before I go there, I did want to show you one other directory here, which is the source directory. As you're using the SDK, you can build basically 3 things: modules, data actions, and themes. Again, I've covered those in a previous talk. But as you build modules, they'll go under this module directory, and there's a theme directory, which you'll see in action in a few moments when I create a theme. Okay, so since it's ready, I can now go to a browser window, and I'll open a new tab, and I'll go localhost 4000, and there's a special URL here, _SDK/all modules. This allows you to view any of the modules that are installed in my current dev environment. So you can see there are a whole bunch. Most of these modules are part of the module library that we ship. So for example, one of them is the promo banner, and I'll just go back to our live site. The promo banner is this gray banner at the very top, which has some text in it, and that can be configured within the site builder. Let me take a look. So I clicked on it, but notice it doesn't really look like this one over here. The reason is I don't have a theme applied. So as you're developing locally, you'll want to tell it which theme to use. The theme contains all of the CSS. So I'm going to say theme equals Fabricam. That's one of our built-in themes. We provide 2 of them, one called Fabricam and one called Starter. So there you go. So now it looks a little better, and it's just using mock data to present a little bit of text in here. So that's what you can do. You can also create custom modules, and if I just quickly show you back here, there's a Hello World one that is part of our SDK, and I did drop one custom module called Product Feature. and I will show you that momentarily, but hello world one is a very basic one, but that shows up in this list as well. Now, because I added that env environment variable, this one right here, the host, I'll show you what I can do with that. I can remove this /SDK and just leave it as localhost :4000. Now, because I have that variable set, it's going to go to my live site. Now, notice it's doing an authentication right now. It makes sure I have auth access to that site. And now I'm able to see my live site. But what you may not realize is it's rendering in my local dev environment. So I can start making changes. And as I go with this talk, I'm going to be making a few changes here to show you that in action as I change things like the theme. All right, so let me get back to the deck here. So I've shown you how to configure your cloud-hosted e-commerce site and the retail server. I haven't shown you the retail server one in action yet, but that's something I'll show you coming up. Okay, so now I want to show you how to update the SDK and module library. So we have regular releases where we release things like new modules and updates to our existing modules. It might be bug fixes. And so you'll want to occasionally grab those new features. And it is a pull model with our SDK and our SSK. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, you need to make sure you're using a compatible version. So if you deploy a new version of your scale unit, you want to make sure you have a compatible version of the the module library. Store starter kit, you might hear me use that term. That was the old name we used for our module library. So to do that, I'll show you in our documentation where to get the version information. And then you would just update the package.json file and run the yarn command, which uses npm to pull down those files. And then finally, when you're done, you could package that up with a command called pack. And I'll show that. And then when you're done that, you can deploy it, upload it and deploy it via LCS. All right, so let me show you a little bit of that in action. So I'm going to close this environment file and I'm back to this package.json file. So the interesting thing to note is this section on dependencies, and I'm going to go to our documentation real quick. So this is our online channel extensibility documentation. Inside of here is a section under deployment and maintenance, and the particular doc I want is SDK and module library update. So in here, this talks about how to update your starter pack right here. And you can see this dependencies section here. That's similar to what I was showing you right here. And if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see a table. So if you notice right now, I have version 9.24 of the starter pack and the Fabricam design kit. And notice 9.24 maps to 10.0.14 of the scale unit. So I actually have on this environment deployed 10.0.15, so I want to upgrade it to 9.25 over here. As a quick way to figure out the version, if you kind of subtract 10 from the min version here, so 25 minus 10 is 15, you kind of get the latest version equivalent of the scale unit over here. Okay, so all I have to do then is change this to 25. I also want to change, I want the latest Fabricam kit, and then also the retail proxy. Now, the reason you want to make sure these match is as we ship new APIs in our commerce scale unit, we want to make sure you have the latest retail proxy that's built against that so that the module library has access to all of those new APIs. That's why you want to make sure you have the same version. Okay, so what I'm going to do is save this file here, and I still have yarn start running down here. I'm going to escape out of there, and all I have to do is type yarn down here, and it's going to detect these changes I made and find updated packages, and then download those. And that will just take probably 20 or 30 seconds. By the way, all of these packages, when they get downloaded, there's a little hint here. If you look in the node modules directory from the SDK directory that we started with, you'll see under here is a msdyn365-commerce modules directory, and in here you'll see all of the module library modules in here. So you can open one. So I'll just pick one like the promo banner, which I've already talked about a little bit. And there's a source directory here, modules, promo banner, and here you can see the various files that make up the module. You can also see in here the Fabricam design kit. So I can see now that this is finished, and that's really all there is to updating my SDK. Now, when I'm ready to upload this to my live production site, what I have to do is build a package. Now, I might not be doing this because of an update, but I might just be doing this for the first time, and I want all of my new customizations to go live on my site. So there's a command you use called yarn msdyn 365, and we have a series of CLI commands, and I'll type. There's one called pack right here. And I won't finish this off. It takes a couple of minutes to run, but it's going to do a full compilation of everything, and the end result will be a zip file. So I'll quickly just show you what that looks like from our documentation. There's a package configuration and deploy document here, and this covers everything I just talked about. So there's that yarn pack command right here. And then this shows the screenshots of uploading the package via LCS. So once you log into LCS, you would pick your project, and you'd select the asset library, and the e-commerce tab over here, and then you can go ahead and upload your package right here. You add your file. When that's done uploading, that takes about 10 minutes or so. When it's done uploading, you can then deploy it to any of your environments. So you'd go to your environment, and similar to that page I showed you earlier, in fact, I'll just bring you right there, this e-commerce page right here where we got to the site builder. There's an apply extension here, and it'll show all your uploaded files right there. Okay. So that really covers all that is needed when updating your SDK or module library. So now I want to move into your module customization options. So out of the box, as I mentioned, we have a library of modules that we ship. There's over 80 modules. And you might want to start making changes. Now, the very first thing you can do is use Site Builder to create any page that you want. But you're a little potentially locked into the style of those modules and how they're developed. Each module is built up of the HTML and CSS. So I'm going to show you the different levels of changes you can make. There's another Tech Talk I did last week, which should be live. If it's not live yet, it should be live within a couple of days, around theming your website. And that goes into the option 1 and 2 in more detail, but I'm going to just give a quick overview here. So the 5 different ways to, and you want to look at these kind of in order as you're thinking about making changes. The first one is code-free changes. And I'm going to go into each of these in detail. The next is developing a custom theme. After that, you can also additionally override any data action. A data action is basically a method that gets data into your module. So it can call any of the services. It might call the retail server or ratings and reviews or the recommendation service. It can call any of those servers to get data, or even your own third-party services would use data actions. And we have a library of data actions that we ship, to get product details, but you can override them. And then fourth is cloning a module. That's sort of the option you want to really try not to jump to right away. If you need to change a module, try to do options 1 to 3 first, because once you clone a module, you now have a copy of it. And that's really what cloning is. It makes a copy. And I'll talk about that a little more. But when you do make a copy, you no longer will get any of the updates that we make to the original module. You'll have to merge those in yourself. And then finally, if all of those don't meet your requirements, you can create a custom module. And maybe you're creating something that's completely different, calling a new service, and you want a very custom module that we don't ship. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, so code-free changes. We have basically 3 ways that you can do this. First of all, the modules are built with a little bit of flexibility in some cases. For example, we have a content block module, and I'll just show that in action here. Up here, this carousel is hosting 3 content blocks, and this is the hero layout. Right below here is another content block, and it's using a tile layout. So there's configurations that you can use to change the look and feel of a module. Again, those are built in, so you don't have a lot of flexibility with changing those unless they're already provided. The next thing you can do is style presets. And for style presets, this allows you to use Site Builder, and you can go on the left-hand side of Site Builder. There's a design tab here. If you select that, you can see here that I have underneath my Fabricam site, I have 2 of these things called style presets, and none are active at the moment. What this allows me to do is change any of a set of CSS variables. So if I just open this Fabricam one here, you'll see, oh, I've got, let me try this again. I'm using some test environments here, so I sometimes have problems with them. So I can see actually this one was set as an active preset. So I'm going to just look at this. And in here, I can see a bunch of global variables, and I can change it. So this is the brand accent. And if you notice the button here is green, that's the brand accent. So that's used by several of the modules. And there's a whole bunch of different global options here. And then at a module level, there are also additional CSS that's been exposed, and you can change that. As you develop your own modules, you can actually expose through your theme any of these variables within a site preset. So another, let me go back for a second. You could have multiple site presets, and you might use that for a theme that has a light version of the theme and a dark version, or maybe you want to separate the classic version of the theme and a vintage look of the theme. So that's what you can do here. Now these are fixed variables. The moment you want to start changing anything, that's when you'll create a copy of it, and that's what you see down here. And when you're ready to view it, you can hit view. You can save it, make it the active preset, or if you're just modifying one, you can preview it ahead of time. Like I said, we have another talk that really goes into all the details here. The second way to make some changes is another area called CSS overrides. It's located in a different section under Site Settings Design. We're going to be merging those in a future release, but under here, you have the ability to upload these CSS files. And what that allows you to do is any other CSS that you couldn't get through style presets, you can change. So for example, if I wanted to, and I'm just going to bring up F12 here, if you've done this before in a browser, you can examine any parts of your page, and you can start seeing some of the classes that are here. So for example, it might be a little hard to read, but I've highlighted this MS header logo. And up here I can see, hey, there's a margin added to it and a few other things. But if I wanted, I can just cut and paste this and make changes and paste it into the CSS file. And what happens is as we're rendering the page, we then apply that CSS file on top of it. And in fact, I'll just download this one real quick and just show you what this one looks like. So this one here is an override. I'm going to open the file and just notice that the MS promo banner class has been forced to have a red background. So if I hit, and I can hit preview first, I'm just going to go ahead and activate this. And I've activated it. Now if I go to my website and if I refresh that, it might take a couple seconds here for it to be picked up. There we go. I now have a red background in my promo banner. So I'm going to go ahead and deactivate that. I don't need that to stay red. And that's really all there is to CSS changes. Okay. So that really covers the code-free. Again, I've got a lot more details on that in another tech talk that we've done. And now I'm going to move over to custom theme development. So pretty much any site out there, you're going to want your own custom theme. We do ship, like I said, FabricAm and a starter theme. And you can create a theme using an add theme CLI command and give it a theme name. And I'll show you that in a moment. The purpose of a theme is to basically house all of your module CSS. And then we also have a few other features it provides, which is a module view override. So not only can you change your CSS, you can actually change the HTML, so the layout, so that you can't do with CSS changes alone. You can also change the module definition override, and you can override the module library component. I'm going to go into each of these to show you what I mean. Now, I did mention that you can create a new theme, but also I usually recommend cloning the FabricAm theme as your starter. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio here, and I'm going to create a new theme. I'm just going to call this, so I'm going to say add theme, and I'm going to call it spring. Now, if you noticed, a new directory just popped up with spring. And if I quickly look at this theme here, it's got a definition file, and this contains metadata so that when you're picking your theme in the site builder, it has the friendly name as well as a description. I'll just leave those as is for now. And the views directory, this is where your view overrides and your definition overrides are here. Just notice that they're empty right now. And then I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. And then your styles, this is your Spring theme SAS file. And a few things to note here. This is just basically a template of a theme, so there's not a lot in here. But you can see we've set the body background color. It just uses a variable here, which is defined right here, and it's using a default color, which is defined up here. So that's basically what the main purpose of a theme is to house all of your Sass for your modules. One more important thing is pulling in Bootstrap, which is an open source JavaScript library, UX library. So we use Bootstrap extensively in our module library modules. You don't have to use Bootstrap in your own modules. You can use any UI frameworks that you like. But if you do want to change that, you would potentially have to change all of the CSS in our module library modules. Next file I want to show you in the theme is this definition file here. And this file here contains everything we saw in the style presets. So remember, there was a global section, and then there was a bunch of variables in there. So here is the name of the CSS class right here, the brand primary color, and then we have a friendly name and description. Again, this is just metadata for the site builder, and you can have a default color here, etc. So there's a section on global, and then there's another section for the module specific ones here. So here you can see the header module has been defined with two additional variables under there. Okay. So that is really all there is inside of a theme. But like I said, it doesn't have everything I want. It doesn't have all the CSS for those other modules. So a better way to start when building a theme is to clone the Fabricam theme. So I'm going to use the command clone, and it's used for modules, but a theme is really just a special kind of module. And I'm going to call this new one AdventureWorks. Once I do that, we're going to see a new module added to modules. Now, like I said, the clone is not just used for themes, but it's used for cloning modules as well. So because the theme is a special module, I do have to drag this over to the themes directory. Okay, now since I did that, I'm going to go ahead and run yarn start to kickstart and show you a few things running once I have node server running. While that is building, I'm going to open up the AdventureWorks and show you some of the differences with this theme versus the empty theme. First of all, I'll look at the definition file, and it's got the new name I provided, but I want to provide a better friendly name. So generally, I'll provide AdventureWorks here and a better description. I'll just leave that alone for now. We also will next look in the styles directory. Now, if you notice, there's a whole bunch of subdirectories here. And those contain all the Sass I need for the built-in module library. So if I open up the main AdventureWorks.theme Sass file, notice it's just importing a bunch of files, one from each of these directories. So if I take the first one here and just look at that index, it's just pulling in additional files. So let's look at the first file. This file here defines all the standard colors. And again, I talk about this in more detail in the theming TechTalk, so I won't go into too much detail here, but this contains your color information, your font information, your icons, and you can change. This is your theme now. You can change any of this to your heart's content. The next most important one I want to show is this modules directory here, and you'll see a Sass file pretty much for every one of the module library modules. And for example, I will load up the promo banner one here. All right, so there's the promo banner. And I do want to note that my server is ready to run. So let's go take a look at this theme in action. So I'm going to go back here. And if you recall, the last thing we did was looked at localhost 4000 to see our live site. I'm just going to refresh that, make sure everything is still working. Okay. Right now, though, it's using the default Fabricam theme. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to tell it to use the AdventureWorks theme right here. Okay. It looks the same. Well, that's because I made a copy of the Fabricam theme, so it's pretty much the same at the moment. But if I now start making any changes, so promo banner, notice there's some CSS in here. Let's say I want to change the width here. I'll just kind of randomly pick in one of the properties. And notice as I save it, it's recompiling here. But this is cool. You can see right away, this is now taking up 50% of my screen. And if I resize the window, it's going to continue to use that CSS property. So that's how you can easily make changes to any of the CSS. I'm going to just revert that back. I'll also show you that if you recall, I was using the underscore all modules here. And if I now go to the promo banner or any of the modules, I can also use that new theme as I'm developing my modules. So in this case, I'm going to say and theme equals AdventureWorks. And there we go. There's the same theme. Okay, so let me quickly go back here and see what we've covered so far. So we've covered modifying your module CSS. I now want to cover modifying your module view overrides, or adding module view overrides. So another thing a theme presents us with, and I'll just close a few directories here, clean up a few things. There is a views directory here, and notice there are some view.tsx files here. So every one of our modules, I shouldn't say everyone, most of our modules, some modules may not actually render any views. For example, we have some script injector modules, and so they may not all have view files, but most of our modules have been broken up. You have a TSX file and a view file. So in fact, I have a test module here called product feature. I'll just show you that a TSX, the way a module is made up is that you have a main class and it extends a React component. So all of our modules are React components. And then the business logic can be handled in the TSX file. And then it basically calls a view file to render the HTML. So you can see in this one here, I have a bunch of HTML being rendered here. Now, what a theme allows you to do is override that view file, and I have a CLI command, and what it will do is just copy the view file into your theme. I won't show you that, but you can see our documentation to do that. But take a note that the AdventureWorks theme, which was based off of Fabricam, has some in here. So for example, it has a header view. Now, if I look at this file here, this is the file again that creates the HTML. Now it's been componentized, so it might not look like clean HTML, but for example, this right here generates the logo in the header. This right here is a nav icon, and the nav icon, I'll just show you that real quick. Let me go to our home page here. The nav icon, as it goes smaller on the screen to like a mobile size view, that's this hamburger button here. So you can see that renders first, then the logo, then the search box. And let's say I want to change it so my logo shows up on the right side. Now that you generally can't do with CSS. You might be able to hack around it a little bit, but really you want to change HTML. So with a view override, without changing the core module, I can just do something like this. I can take the logo from here and put it here. Now I'll save this file, and let me go back now to my local host, and let me go back to 4000, and this is going to be my live site. Now the logo is still on the left, but I'm going to now tell it to use my new theme. Theme equals AdventureWorks. And now my module is rendering this HTML content over on the right-hand side now. Now there's some padding issues, and that's easy to fix with the CSS now on top of that. So that's how easy it is to change the view on one of our modules. Now, if you are going to that level, but it still isn't, you're not able to do every change that you want. And that could happen sometimes. Maybe there's some additional business logic that is in the TSX file. So that's basically where we'll come to the next thing, which is cloning the module. And there's one more thing I do want to show, actually, the module definition override and library. So let me show you that. So as you are modifying your module views, you might have a scenario where you want to add an additional configuration to show up in Site Builder. So for example, I'll go back to Site Builder, and I'm going to just pick the header fragment. A fragment is just a set of modules put together that can be added to a page. So this is the header that is used on all of our pages. And notice the promo banner right here. If I look at the configurations over here, notice this alignment property right here, center. Well, if I go back to code here and open up the AdventureWorks directory for definition extensions, there is a promo banner definition extension, and what it has in it is an extra config section where it added an additional configuration for alignment. Now inside of your view extensions, you can leverage an additional configuration to show up. So if I had selected a different theme here, that alignment property wouldn't show up, or if I didn't have that, because it wasn't part of the initial module library configuration. So there's a lot of flexibility within a theme to add. You can even hide some configuration. So if you are overriding one and you no longer need to show a couple of the other settings for that theme, you can choose to hide that as well. Okay, the last thing I want to cover in a theme is something called a component override. We have a set of components and that are built in. They're sort of like helper functions, TSX files. So you can see two of them are being overridden here, cart line item and promo code. There's a command to add those, and I'll just show you what that looks like. And in fact, I'm going to, before I add one, I'm just going to show you a command. So it's add component override. If I do a --list components, that will show me the components that we've provided and the ones that you have the ability to override. So you see there's an add to cart, add to wish list, etc. So what I can do is I'm going to create a new one for add to wish list here. So add to cart. So I will just copy that command. So you can see here, it's asking me for which I need to specify which theme I want to add it to. So I'm going to go ahead and just add it to the spring theme, add to cart. And then down here in my spring theme, under views, I have a new directory components, and then I have this add to cart. But now I can change it. So this might have some business logic, and maybe as I'm adding the item to cart, I want to change some of the details in there. So you have free reign over doing that. So that covers pretty much everything you can do within a theme that I called out here. Now, you can also override one of the data actions. So there are a set of data actions that you can call. Let me show you where they exist. So if I hit Control O here, just like I showed you under Node Modules, Commerce Modules directory here, where we have a list of all the module libraries, there's a directory in here called Retail Actions. And what it does is, let me just open it up here. This shows all of the retail actions that we ship. So you can see, you can kind of tell by the name. For example, there's one called Get Simple Product. Let me find that right here. Get Simple Product. And this is a data action that we have built in. Now, if I want to override this and write my own, I can do that by just creating a new data action. And to create a data action, it's as simple as add this yarn msdyn add data action. I give it a name, so I'll just call this custom simple product. Now, when I add that, it goes ahead and creates a new action directory for me here, and this is just a template. So, but the main thing to note here, before I make any, actually I won't go through this, but you can see in our documentation, but the main thing you need to do is override the ID. So if I go back to this one here, if I copy this ID out of here and paste it into here, this now will override the Get Simple Product. So of course I didn't do any custom code in here yet, but you can now build out your custom data action. Now, any of the module library modules that are already pre-built that call Get Simple Product will now call your version of Get Simple Product. So that's something that can be done here as well. But notice that is global, it's not per theme. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. Okay, and I'm going to go to the next section here. Okay, so that's data action override. So again, module library, they're all using these pre-existing data actions as I showed you. All right, so we're now to the cloning of a module. Now, I already showed you how to clone the Fabricam module. So it's basically the same. You just say clone and then the name of the module and then your new name. Just to reiterate that, I'll just show you real quick here. I can just call clone again. I'm going to say clone, and I can take any module like the header module and just give it a new name. I'll just call this my header. And again, to reiterate, now it's a copy of the module. So if you want this to go live on your site, you're going to have the header and the my header, or maybe you're making a super header. You will also still have to go and change the site builder pages that are using the previous module to use the new module, if that's what you want. But notice here I have the my header module, and then I have all the source code for my header in here. So in here you can see the set of data actions that it uses. There's a whole bunch here. These were the data actions I was just showing you, and then you have a whole bunch of configurations. So that's all there is to doing it. Now I'm just going to delete that module. We're not going to use it, but that's how you clone. And then finally, if all of that isn't what you need, you now need to create a custom module. Again, super easy to create a custom module. You just use add module and module name. So let me show you that. Again, very similar commands that we've been using. But instead of clone, I'll say add module, and I'll say my new module. And once you're done and you want to view things again, I'm going to kickstart the Node server here, yarn start. And while that's running, I want to show you a module that I pre-built already called product feature. So here's my new module that I just added, and here's one that I pre-built. While this is running, I'm just going to show you a couple of things in here. The first thing I want to show you is I am using a data action. So I'm using that get simple products that I was already showing you how to override if you wanted. By declaring a data action in the definition file, what happens is when the server is rendering the e-commerce page, this data action will run server side. That's what the run on. You can also run it client side if you need to debug, but generally you have better performance with running at server side. So at page load, this data action or all the data actions will get run for the page, and the results are going to be put in a variable called products. Now you have to also define that variable right here called products. So that name matches this, and you need to know the return structure of that data action. In this case, it's an array of async results of simple products. If I just hit F, go to definition here, I can see what that looks like. So I can see it's got a name, a description, the price of the product, and whatnot. So let me show you this. I think the node server is running. Let me show you this module in action. So I'm going to go back to this page here and underscore SDK all modules. And this one should show up in my list. There we go, product feature. Now, this is supposed to be 2 columns. If you quickly look at my view here, you'll see I have, I'm rendering 2 columns, and column small 6. Basically, if you're familiar with Bootstrap, it uses a 12-grid system, and this is basically saying, hey, use half for one column, half for the other. Notice it's not showing up. That's because I haven't told it to use a theme yet. So if I remember, we created a spring theme. I'm going to say theme equals spring, and because the spring theme imports Bootstrap, it now picks up the 12-grid system and it works as I wanted. So there we go. And now the reason I'm showing you this module, and notice all of this information, it's actually being pulled from our live server, this Grand Capteau. Now let me show you, and this is going to tie back to one of the first things I showed you earlier was the environment variable, where I set these pieces of information here, the base URL for the retail server, the catalog channel ID, and the OUN. What's happening is this data action is running live against my live retail server that I specified here, and that's why I'm getting real live data here. And in my module, let me show you that one more time. In the definition, I'm calling this this data action right here. And inside of my mocks is where you store all of your data for your mock data to be used in your module. So normally when you ship a module, you use Site Builder to configure it. Well, when you're debugging it here, you can't set these properties. So instead use a mock. So if you see all of these properties in my config section, I have image alignment, product title, etc. I've defined those in my mock file right here. There's a config section with each of these. So for example, if I change this to image alignment left, save that file, that auto detects that I made a change. And if I go over here, refresh it, I have the image on the left now. But what I want to show is this product ID. This is what's used in that get simple product. So this is a real product that exists in my retail server for that particular shoe. Now, what if I'm developing and I don't have a live retail server to develop against? Well, that's where you can build a data action mock. So that's what I want to show you next. I want to show you both a data action mock as well as a page mock when you're building your custom modules. So for a data action mock, now if you recall, I was showing you the structure of this simple product here. So I'm going to go back to this definition. To build a mock file, I already have one here, but they're very simple to build, and we've got documentation on it. You just need to basically fabricate this returned object. So in here, I have that object here, right here in this mock section here. Now, every one of the built-in data actions has a cache object type. So this one is the simple product. So if you were to look at the code, I think I still have it right here, get simple product. If you look at the top here, you'll see the cache object type right here. That's a little hint. This will come in a little later when I'm talking about performance as well. There's all of our data actions have this object type that gets cached. Okay, so let me go back here. And once I have this file created, this is just a JSON file that is under my mocks directory. I can now in my URL, make sure I have, yes, I do have yarn node still running. And what I can now do is I can bring up that mock. Now, to tell this page to use a mock, there's a new query string parameter I'm going to add, which is ampersand action mock equals, and I'm using, this is the name of my module, colon, and then the name of the file of my mock. So my module mock, if I just show you here, that's my module mock. So I'll go back here and I'm going to hit enter, and notice the data, just to show you here, this is says retro horn rimmed sunglasses. That is now being rendered here. So at this point in time, it's not calling my live retail server. So this is great when you want to debug, or if you want to test edge cases of certain data that might come back. Okay, so this is great, but you may need to see several modules running together at the same time. That's where we have our next level of mocks, which we call page mocks. So if I go back to our development environment, there's a directory under source called page mocks. And notice in here, there's this sort of default one called page mock. Now I'm going to create a new one, but there's a general structure. Once you've stared at these a couple of times, you'll see they have like a module section, which lists all the modules in it. The root always has a page root, and then there's some additional rendering context below it. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file here, and I'll just call this, let's see, I'll call it page mock, page_mock.json file. And I have a pre-made one that I will paste in there. Okay, and then I will save that. Let me show you what is going on here. So it looks a little similar to this default one I showed you, but what I've done in here is I've added in the module section, there's a body at the top, and then there are two modules being added here. Notice the type name. This is the name of my module. This maps to the actual name in my definition file. And so you can see I'm displaying the product feature module twice, but I can add any module in here. And then I have a config section. So you can see I have image alignment left, and I have one product ID, and I actually have a different product ID for the second one. And so if I now view this on my server, so I'm going to just go here and copy my URL. So to do a page mock, you would go add a query string parameter mock equals and then the name of the page mock. You don't need the .json part of it. There we go. So again, I've lost my columns because it's not using a theme, so I just have to say and theme equals spring, and there we go. So I have module 1 here, module 2 there, and I can just go ahead and you know, if I wanted, I can just add a third section or any other module under there. So if I add a third one there, save that, and then go back here, refresh this page, and I should have 1, 2, and 3. There we go. So that's a page mock. But I want to take this one step further and show you something that's really handy when debugging. So you may have a situation where you're developing some new modules, and you may have a live site, but you haven't uploaded the module yet, but you want to see, hey, how does that new product feature module look embedded on this page? Really, the one way to do it is finish developing your module or a prototype of it, upload it to your server, and place it using Site Builder on this page. But I want to show you another quick little way to do this using a page mock. So you can take your production site and add a new query string parameter here, item equals node server proxy true. And what this does is it will give you the JSON representation of that page. And notice how much bigger this is than that last page mock I was using. But notice it has the same page root at the top. So I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, and I'm going to create a new file under page mocks, and I'm going to call this homepage.json, and I'm going to paste this here. Then, you know what I'll do is I'll just right-click Format Document, so it's a little cleaner. Now, let me go back here. I'm just going to hit the back button to get my live site again. Notice this new season has arrived, so I want to embed something above that. So I'm going to search for it. New season. Okay, there we go. So now I have this section, and what I can do, it's as easy as just copying any of these sections and adding a new one. And in this case, I want my ID to be, the type name to be my product feature. So product feature. And I just need to give this a unique name, so I'll just put 2 here. Now, I need the configs that go along with my product feature. So if I go back to my module here, product feature, go to my mocks file here, and I can just copy this section out of here and add that in here, and then save this file. So it's called homepage. Now I can go back over here where I was doing this mock, and now instead I can just say mock equals homepage. And now I can view my homepage, but check this out. There's my, now it doesn't have CSS, that's why it's not rendering centered right now, but I do get my 2 columns with Bootstrap, and there you see it embedded on the page. So that is another great way to use page mocks. Okay, so let me go back now to the presentation. That really covers everything I wanted to show around all the choices you have when building your custom modules. So now we're going to move over to performance. So everybody wants a very performant site, of course. So the first thing I'm going to show is something about viewport configurations. I'll go into details on each of these, and then we're going to talk about minimizing HTML, CSS, and your JavaScript file sizes, caching, browser hint meta tags, doing some perf analysis as well. So the first one is viewport configuration. So every theme should have a theme settings.json file. I have a little snippet here from the Fabricam theme, but I'm going to go over to code and show you that in a little more detail. So I will open up that file. So underneath, let me close everything up here. And underneath my theme, I'm going to open up the AdventureWorks theme that we cloned. And one file I didn't talk about yet was this adventureworks.theme.settings. In this file, you'll see all of the, not all, most of the modules that have images that are rendered will have properties in here of what height and width to set each viewport size to. So we use an image resizer because when you want to upload to the media library, you want to upload the highest quality image you can. And then as you're resizing your website, if you go down, for example, to a mobile view, let me just, for these smaller images, you don't want to be serving up massive images for each of these, right? So we have the settings file where you can specify. So I'm going to just scroll down a little bit. So notice this is the hero layout for the content block. So notice in here, there is a section for each module. And within a module, if a module has different layouts, so here's the hero layout, you can see in here the various settings for the width and height. So you can see here how the extra small has been set to 800 by 600, and you can see all these different values here. Also, you'll see not only that hero one, but as I mentioned on our homepage, these are the tile layout. So if I scroll a little further down to tile, you'll notice some other numbers used here. Now, something you might want to make note of as well is the aspect ratio is different for those 2 layouts. Now, what happens is if you try to upload a different image to place in a tile, you might end up with some white striping on the top or the sides based on the aspect ratio, as our image resizer will force it to these this width and height. So you want to make sure if you change your design to have a different aspect ratio to change it in here as well. But you want to make sure as you're adding your own custom modules to follow the pattern of making sure you define all your image sizes in this file. Very important here. All right, so that's viewport configuration. Now I want to talk a little bit about minimizing your HTML, CSS, and JS files. So of course, for good performance, you don't want to be sending down every client any unused JavaScript. So you want to make sure as you're doing your custom code, you don't forget to maybe you might have some test modules in there with JavaScript. You want to make sure you delete those before you ship. We also have a little helper file called platform.settings.json under settings. Now I want to show you in our SDK, we don't actually have a default for that. It's not in here. So you'll see cache settings, which I'll be talking about in a minute, some theme settings. I won't be talking about that here, and app settings here. But to create, for this file, you can create your own file, platform.settings.json. And inside of it, we have a few configurations that you can modify. And you'll see these values here for these ones that I'm not talking about are just the defaults. But we have a property in here called exclude modules. So if you know there are a set of modules that you just don't use on your e-commerce site that we ship, you can add them here, and then we won't serve up the JavaScript. So that's one way to reduce your size. We have another way to help reduce size, which is with chunking. So if you might know about JavaScript chunking, we break it down into chunks and send it down to the clients. Well, in 10.0.17 release coming up, we've added another setting in here to allow you to chunk them together. So if you, for performance reasons, if you know that several modules are used a lot on a single page, you can group those modules together. So for example, if you're on a PDP page, you might have a buy box module and a ratings and review module. You can specify the modules to be downloaded together. So as you're looking and doing deep analysis of some of the JavaScript and chunking, and you need to change that, you can do that with these two properties. Again, that's not available yet. We'll have documentation live very soon for that as well. All right, so I'm going to move over to caching now. So caching, most of our caching is done at the data action layer for us. So data actions, if you recall, is what gets data into a module. So I showed the use of one of them, which was get simple product. And we have a bunch of default values that we set up for caching setup. And I'll show you that in just a moment. But when you create your own data actions, you want to make sure to set some caching values in there as well. So this file here, the cache settings JSON file, let me show you that file here, right there. So notice there's a TTL, time to live, and a time to refresh right here. So remember I was using simple product, you'll find that here, and you'll see the default time to live here, and the default time to refresh down here. So you can just go ahead and add your own modules. I wouldn't mess around with any of the existing values unless you truly know that you want to change something purposefully, but you can just add to these lists as well. So I highly recommend you do that for any custom modules that you create. All right, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about in caching. We have, again, documentation in our extensibility docs that cover that as well. So browser hint meta tags. So another thing you can do with our site builder tool is you can add some DNS prefetch URLs. So this is particularly handy if you start integrating with any other third-party services. And basically a DNS prefetch URL tells the page to basically do a DNS lookup before the user, kind of in the background, before the user accesses it. So that way when the user does access a link eventually, the DNS lookup has already taken place, and that reduces latency. So I want to show you in Site Builder where you can access that. So over in Site Builder, there is site settings down here, and under extensions is a prefetch URL right here. And you can see when I hover over the eye, it tells you a little bit of information about it, and I can just click add and add the URL right in there. I'll just hit delete. Now, once you make any changes here, you do have to hit save and publish. So pretty simple. We also have a meta tags module that you can add to your pages if you need to add any other meta tags, HTML meta tags to a page. So we're quite flexible there. Okay, so next, talk about perf analysis. So of course, as with any website, you're going to want to do just some basic perf analysis on your site before you go live. Generally, we recommend you test your homepage, your category, your product detail pages, especially if you've done any customizations on them, just to make sure you haven't introduced anything. And it's something that we extensively do with our module library, and it's a good idea. So there's many free or paid tools out there. I won't. It's a little out of context to go into that, but just as a basic testing, I like to use the F12 debugger tools in my browser. So it's as simple as loading up your home page or any page, hit F12, select the network tab here, and just do a refresh, and then you can see everything that's happening on the page. And then you can look for anomalies or anything that's taking longer or any 404s within there. So that's definitely kind of a min bar at the very least when doing some perf analysis. And finally, the last thing I'm going to cover is security. So one of the main security endpoints that we support are CSPs, so Content Security Policy, and we support pretty much all of the CSP directives and nonce, for example, or you can use one of the directives if you want to restrict the e-commerce site from loading inside of an external site. And to get to it, again, it's from within the Site Builder tool. So I'm going to go back to the Site Builder tool. Now it's under the same site settings extension, and you can see a content security policy section right here. And right here, for example, I can disable it if I want. Now I wouldn't recommend that, but you can. There's a whole bunch of directives here. So here's nonce. Nonce will add a special number to all the JavaScript from within the site, so you can't have JavaScript injection. And for example, if you start using some third-party fonts, you'd want to make sure you add their URLs here. If you add any JavaScript, maybe you're adding an analytics package, you can add that to the script source down here. So pretty standard if you're familiar with CSPs. All right, so that really covers everything I wanted to go through today. And on this last slide here, we have a URL for the upcoming Tech Talk series. And we've had a lot of past Tech Talk talks. I've mentioned them as I was going. So I've got a great one on e-commerce extensibility, and it really shows you, it takes you through a deep dive of building a module, all the files involved, setting up your development environment. We have another one on theming your site, which covers a lot of the style presets, how to add or remove style presets. So a little deeper than what I went today. And we have a great talk on an architectural overview. And then I have a few links to some of our articles. And finally, if you want to contact us, probably the two best places are our public forums. So you can see some URLs for that, as well as our Yammer group. So thank you so much for spending time with me. And I'm going to pass this back to Evan now.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. We would like to get your feedback on today's session. I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We value your feedback and welcome your input on how we did today and what you would like to see in future sessions. That survey scores on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible, and we thank you for your participation in that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and thank you to our audience for logging in and joining us today. Please stay safe and have a good day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.